Anyone ever tell you you're incredibly annoying?
Anyone ever tell you you're from Monk's Corner? Because I could literally smell the beef jerky and deer urine when you walked in the room.
See, that's exactly what I'm talking about.
Let me guess. I should be a little more positive. What's up, bro? You want to go grab some taquitos after racquetball today?
No?
Okay. FYI, for your information and what have you, a positive attitude has never solved one problem. But it can make a lot of people hate you. I mean, no one can stand those people with their lemonade for life perspectives. Like that girl you work with, the one that always acts like she ate rainbows for breakfast and rode a unicorn to work. Yeah, she's a lot of fun to hang out with. There's a reason she has a picture of her cat for her home screen.
All right, since you know everything, then what advice would you give to somebody who's struggling with negative thoughts?
I would say, learn to laugh at your problems. Because everyone else is laughing at you, I mean.
That's a terrible thing to say to someone.
Hey, I don't make the rules. I just make the exceptions. Kind of like your haircut. But let's be honest, everything's so much funnier as long as it's not happening to you. Am I right? Have you ever gone on YouTube? Pull out your phone, look up, guy on a Segway gets hit by a falcon. I mean, look it up. It'll be the first thing pops up. Wow.
I'm really regretting we set up these interviews.
Are you kidding me? I'm at the top of a very short list of good things that have ever happened to you. Anywho. Taquitos! You see what I did there? I brought it back around, because that's how I work. Right? I'm good. Feeling good about that.
Man, I'm glad you're here today. And I know if you're here for the first time, you're probably going, man, what's up? I don't know about this place. I'm not sure. I want to tell you something about the group of people you're around, because if I were you, that's the question I would have. So but the group of people that you're around today, we're not a group of people who used to be people like you. We're not a group of people who just tolerate people like you. We're not a group of people who try to change or fix people like you. We're a group of people who have the same issues, struggles, problems, stuff going on in our life that you have. We're a group of people who are just like you. Every single person in this room has parts of our story that we wish we could write over, do over, edit, or just delete and forget altogether. We would love nothing more than to move past those parts of our story. But the reality is, those parts of our story are not just tolerated here. They're celebrated, they're loved. In fact, they're valuable and important here. Your story, above everything else, is safe here because it's an important part of you being able to move forward with your life. And that's an important thing for us to understand. That kind of humility, that kind of vulnerability is a key piece of who we are as a church. It's a key piece of who you are. It's a key piece of why today is easier for me to talk about. Because honestly, I've been speaking in front of crowds now for 24 years, I think it is, give or take. And man, it's just amazing to me to think about it. But when we talk about something like insecurity, that's what we're talking about today. When we talk about insecurity, I am so thankful to have a group of people like this family to be able to talk about it, because I know that when we get done today and I'm talking about my real life and my mess and my story and my mistakes and my insecurities, I know that I'm not the only one in the room who's going to be honest about it. It's helpful to me to know that when I walk up onto a platform like this one and I start to open up, that I'm not the only one who's going to think about our insecurities, and you're not going to go home, at least hopefully, right, and have me for lunch, right? You know, we're like, well, I didn't know he struggled with insecurity like that. I never do, but I mean, I hear that other people do, right? I mean, I love the fact that we're a group of people who are broken and messed up. And I want us to understand something before we even get started in journeying through our own insecurity, our own mess. The whole potential, or the key to you experiencing any kind of wholeness in your life is related directly to your willingness to be vulnerable. The key to experiencing wholeness in your life is key. It's linked to your willingness to be vulnerable. Vulnerable, that's not easy to do, is it? I mean, it's not easy to go, man, this is where I mess up. This is where I struggle. This is what's going on. Or it's even harder sometimes, not just to admit our faults, but to be vulnerable and say, man, I really feel insecure in this way. Like, I just don't feel like I'm pretty enough. I don't feel like I'm strong enough. I don't feel like I'm rich enough. I don't feel like I'm smart enough. I don't feel like I'm enough, right? I mean, we've all felt that way. Can I get this? This means yes, right? I mean, does anybody in here not feel insecure? I mean, seriously. Everybody's pretty much, you all feel insecure about stuff? I mean, every single one of us is like this. And the key to it is vulnerability. Isn't this sentence the one that kind of pops into your brain every single time you have this problem? I'm not blank enough, right? I mean, I'm not smart enough. I'm not sharp enough. I'm not good enough. I'm not rich enough. I'm not pretty enough. I'm not this. I'm not that. I'm not all these things. I mean, that's my story, right? My story, I'm not smart enough. I mean, you may or may not know this about me, but I didn't graduate high school, right? I went through high school and it was, like wrecked my life, wrecked everything about me, wind up going and moving to Texas because Texas would let you get your graduation equivalency diploma without having to be out of school a whole year. So I had to go take the GED test. So I'm one of those people. Maybe you're one with me. You didn't get a senior prom either not because I was homeschooled, but because I was not schooled right. I didn't pass a single semester of English, so I kind of have that chatterbox always running in my mind. You're not smart enough. I went on to school, right? I thought, okay, I'm going to hit the reset button, get my GED, and go off to college. Well, I got a GED, and I changed my circumstances, but I didn't change my study habits, so I went away to a year of Liberty University in Lynchburg, Virginia. Cost $21,000. I didn't pass a single class, but I did get $1,100 for the parking tickets. So, but my mom and dad were so happy with me. They were proud I was in school, right? And I went to a Christian school at that point, largely because I had a drug problem. My parents drugged me to a Christian school, and it was the way it went, right? So I constantly feel you're not smart enough. I'll read stuff. I mean, I love to speak to crowds. I love to share with people what God teaches in his word. But I got to be honest with you, when I hang around pastors, I always feel like an idiot. They're really smart and they've got long seminary educations and they've got this and they've been doing this and they're like, well, really the linguistics would indicate. I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about, man. I mean, this stuff's written in English. They sell it at Walmart, right? I mean, don't we just get like the Holy Spirit telling us this stuff? And, like, I get a little bit frustrated. I feel like I'm not smart enough, and I always feel that way. When I'm in a group of people, especially a group of men, and I'm standing around literally in like a circle of men, I'm a big guy, right? I'm a big guy. I always feel like I'm a foot shorter and 100 pounds smaller than everybody in the room. Everybody's like, you're not, trust me. I get it. I know that I'm not. I look at the scale and I know I'm not. But I stand in a group of men and I feel like I'm tiny because there's just that little seventh grader that's still injured and insecure, right? That still just feels like he's tiny, Then I look at a scale again, in the same moment that I'd feel tiny and insignificant, I look at a scale and I go, nobody is ever going to follow you if you don't lose some weight. If you don't stop doing this, you don't start looking this way, all the good leaders, when you watch, you guys see pastors, when you scroll through your Facebook feed, you'll see people who share a pastor, they share this, they share that, they share this. When I see those, all I hear is, you're a loser. Those guys are great at this, you suck. Like, I hear that all the time, the chatterbox. We all hear, right? I'm not smart enough, I'm not good enough, I'm not sharp enough, I'm not good looking enough, I'm not whatever. We all hear it. What do you hear? Just be honest with me. Can I ask for a little audience participation? Because we're that kind of family, right? Well, what do you hear? What are the things that you hear? I'm not what enough? Rich enough? What was this one? Thin enough? Fit enough? I'm not fit enough, but you're a little too round. I'm not. Hey, I tell people all the time, look, I'm in shape. Round is a shape. Let's be fair, okay? Like, I'm in. Okay, what else do you hear? Not tall enough? Is that what it said? Tall enough? Okay. What? Young enough. Wow, I hear that one creeping up on me, right? Yeah. What else? Patient enough? Successful enough? I thought you said sexy enough, but I'm cool with that too. Like, I was like, oh, this is about to get real. No, I'm just kidding. But man, isn't that the case? Don't we just not feel enough, whatever it is? Can you give it up for these people who are proud enough? Look at that. That's huge. That you are honest enough to be able to share that with a group of people, some you know, some you don't know, and you're saying those things. And you know what? The reason you felt that way is because every single person in this room hears every one of those voices. The enemy, we call him the Chatterbox for this series. The enemy is not creative. He's just consistent. He just uses the same messages over and over and over again until you react to one of them. And then he found it, right? And then he knows how to push that button over and over and over again, relentlessly until you just crush and crumble. And he gets to carry out what we talked about last week, his goal to steal and kill and destroy. And the truth of our lives is he is not done until everything that gives us hope is dead. And that's the truth of the story. You know, here's the deal. I mean, there's this guy in the Bible that you've probably heard of. His name is Moses. And Moses' story was one of those stories that's just a powerful story. And you know probably the highlights of the story, right? I mean, you're familiar because they make movies about the highlights of the story, like the parting of the Red Sea. It's a big day, right? I mean, when you stand up and you raise up your walking stick and the Red Sea just kind of moves apart and you get to walk across, or, you know, let my people go. You get that part of the story. You get all the story where he leads them in the wilderness. You get all the great parts of Moses' story. But what we don't often see is the moments of insecurity and vulnerability and where he's working through. And what we don't often see or talk about is the dark moments of his life. Just give you a little backstory, and we're going to rush through this thing, but Moses was born just like the rest of us, right? But he was born at a time when the Pharaoh was going to kill all of the firstborn, all of the male children. He's trying to control the population of the Hebrew people. And so he puts out this decree to kill him, but mom's like, I don't want my baby to die. Can you imagine that? That's weird, huh? So she puts him inside of this wicker basket, puts him on the Nile River, and floats him down the river. He's discovered, there's this little infant in a little basket, is discovered by one of Pharaoh's daughters, and she picks up the baby and is like, I want to keep this baby, but she doesn't know how to sustain the baby, you know what I'm saying? We have great childcare, by the way. So she doesn't know how to nurse this baby, like she's like, I can't muster up what it takes. I mean, if she's like, I don't have blank enough, you get what I'm saying, right? So she doesn't have enough whatever to do this. And so she's like, what do we do? And one of her people says, hey, you know what? You know, a lot of the Hebrew women have had their babies taken away from them, killed. So there are lots of them that are prepared for this sort of event. Why don't I get one of the Hebrew women that are your kind of maidservants, and she'll come in here and nurse the baby. And so it's a pretty exciting thing for mom. She goes and picks, you see God's hand in this, goes and picks Moses' mother to come in to nurse this child, so she gets to raise her child. Now she raises a Hebrew child inside of the palace, and eventually there comes this tension that exists, right? Between the way he was raised and the truth of his identity. You ever had that tension? Right? The truth of who we are and the way we were raised, the way we think, kind of come in direct conflict with each other. And he kind of messes around, trying to, torn in this world. Am I a part of the palace, or am I one of the Hebrew slaves? And eventually he sees this Egyptian picking on this Hebrew guy and beating him up. And he just goes postal on the guy before there was a postal, right? And he kills the Egyptian and then hides his body in the sand. I love this part of the story, right? Because God uses a murderer to do his work. I'm like, hey, if he can use a murderer, he can certainly use a guy with a GED, right? So I get this idea of, by the way, I did go to college. I feel like I should say that. Like after that, I didn't do well, but I went and we got through it. So praise God for Sheila. Okay, so anyway, so all this story kind of gets to this place where he freaks out. Pharaoh's after him. He panics and he runs away and hides out in the desert. Winds up on this well when these women are coming up to take water from the well. A bunch of shepherds come up, and the Bible doesn't say exactly what's happening, but this story happens where they're being aggressive in some way. We can only assume what they're being aggressive for, right? And so they're being aggressive to this woman. He comes up and takes care of them. They run away. He saves these women, and they go back and tell their dad. Now listen, I have 3 daughters, okay? So if somebody came up to me and said, hey, Dad, the girls came up to me and said, Dad, we were at this place. We were over at Walmart, and because that's where all the bad things happen in Jackson. You don't know if you know that already, but like, they were at Walmart, and there's talking, and these 3 guys came up, and this one guy came and saved him. I'm like, I want to know the one guy's name. What's up with this guy? Because that's pretty awesome. I like this guy. Well, that's exactly what happens. So they go to tell Jethro's his name. He's That's a pretty crazy name, right? I mean, he was probably from Lexington, so Jethro is his name. And so Jethro's like, tell me this guy's name, tell what's going on. So they bring Moses in, they make him part of the family, they give him one of the daughters. He's like, man, all I do is I was just helping some ladies out, but this was working out really well. He becomes this like, you're gonna get to this area, and he's of land and this sheep and all this stuff, and he's tending to his flock out on what we call Mount Sinai. Now you're starting to hear the story, right? And all of a sudden, he looks over, and there's this bush that's burning, but it's not being consumed. And he's, if there's just a bush that's burning, I want to know about it. But if there's a bush that's burning, and it's not like burning up and going away, there's some questions. And so he walks over to this bush, and God speaks out of the bush. I was like, it's crazy. And he's like, okay, man, like maybe I ate something funny for lunch, or I don't know what's going on with this thing. It's not even 4:20. And it's like, this is what's going on. And so he's freaking out just a little bit. That was a joke, if you get mad about that. There are other churches. Okay, but he's talking to these people, and he's talking to God, and God speaks to him out of this burning bush, and he says, hey, listen, I want you to go and tell the Pharaoh. Now, remember how this works out. Like, he's like, I just left there, dude, right? Like, I went there, and God always says, I want you to tell Pharaoh to let my people go. He says, I've been really compassionate. I've been watching this story unfold with my people, and I want you to go tell Pharaoh to let my people go. And Moses' reply in Exodus chapter 3 is this. Look at this. But Moses protested to God. How does that work out, right? But no, how many of us, we always say this, right? If I knew exactly what God wanted me to do, I would just do it, right? If I just need to know what God wants me to do. God, if you just tell me exactly what you want me to do, I'll do it. Isn't that how we all feel? I mean, like if God spoke to you and you like out loud and said, I want you to do this, we all think that we would do it. Here's Moses. He said, but Moses protested God, and he's like, who am I to appear before Pharaoh? I mean, who am I to lead the people out of Egypt? I mean, you know what's going on in his mind, right? He's audibly heard God tell him exactly what he wants him to do, but the chatterbox is just rolling away, right? Who am I? I killed an Egyptian. Who am I? I have no leverage there. It's not like I'm some great leader. I grew up in the palace. I killed one of their own. I've been expelled. I'm running from Pharaoh. I'm out here in the thing. God, do you have any idea who you've called? I mean, do you have any idea what you're asking me to do? I'm not good enough. I'm not good enough. I mean, his I'm not blank enough is I'm not good enough. God, don't you know what I've done? Don't you know the mistakes I've made? Don't you know the story I've told? Don't you know the things I wish I could change, edit, do over, or completely delete and forget altogether? Like, don't you know me? I'm not even close to good enough. You ever felt that way? The chatterbox just rolling away at him. You're not good enough. You can never do that because you're divorced. You can never do that because you had that problem. You can never do that because you'll always be an addict. Isn't that how the chatterbox rolls away at us? Defining us by our failures rather than calling us by our name. Isn't that our story over and over again? You see, the guy who parted the Red Sea felt the same way. It goes on in the next couple of verses, the next chapter. He's kind of still having this argument with God. And it says this, but Moses pleaded with the Lord, Lord, I am not very good. I'm not a very good speaker. I'm not very good with words. I never have been, and I'm not now. And even though you've spoken to me, I get tongue-tied and my words get tangled. Listen, I speak in front of crowds all the time. Like, it's what I do. But when I was standing in front of people who are not our kind of people, right, I get freaked out. I spoke a year ago. I spoke at the First United Methodist Church downtown. It was the scariest thing. I've spoken at funerals. I've spoken at weddings. I've spoken in front of 1,000 people. The crowd's huge. There could have been 9 people in that room. The building alone scared me, right? And I'm walking in, and I'm like, no, dude. God, I cannot talk to these people. I was so nervous. Like, I ate lunch, and then I unate lunch, if you know what I'm saying. It was just absolutely terrifying to me because I'm looking at it going, God, now this is where the real pastor, preacher people, this is where they're like, if you say the wrong thing, they don't like you. And I say the wrong thing before I think. Like, it comes out of my mouth and I'm like, crap, did I say that out loud? You know, like, that kind of stuff happens all the time for me. I just don't feel sharp enough. And that's what Moses was saying. Like, God, I don't know what the deal is. We don't know Moses' whole story. We don't know his whole story. We don't know, was it a speech impediment? Did he have a lisp? Did he stutter? Did he struggle in some way? Or did he just have kind of what I have, verbal diarrhea? You know, like, it just comes out and I go, here, I'm going to throw all this stuff out and you guys kind of pick out what you like and take the rest home. You know, like, take it home with you, that kind of sort of thing. I don't know what his deal was, but I know this. He looked directly at God after audibly hearing his voice and saying, God, I want to do what you want me to do, but I don't feel sharp enough, man. I just don't feel like I have what it takes. You know why? Because the chatterbox is rolling along, right? I mean, look at what it says next. Then the Lord says to Moses, he asked Moses, like, hey, who do you think I am? I mean, who makes a person's mouth? I mean, do you think he's asking a rhetorical question? I mean, he's like, seriously, Moses, who do you think makes a person's mouth? Who decides whether people speak or don't speak? Man, hear or don't hear, see or don't see. Is it not me? Is it not I, the Lord? Now, here's what I want us to get, is that he doesn't throw down like a bolt of lightning because Moses is reluctant, because Moses hears the chatterbox rolling away in his ear. God doesn't go, Moses, I told you to go. Because, why? Every good parent, right? Because I said so. He doesn't say that to him, right? He doesn't kind of roll on and just smack him. He doesn't hit him. He doesn't punish him in any way. Who gave you a mouth? Who taught you to speak? Who gave you the ability to speak or hear or not hear or see or don't see? Wasn't it me? So isn't that really kind of the tension that's happening? Do you see the tension that's going on? God's saying, hey, Moses, don't you see what I'm seeing? That I'm the one who's capable and maybe it's not about you? I love Moses' response to this. Look at what he says. But Moses again pleaded, look, I'm out of excuses. Lord, please send someone else. Pick somebody else, would you? I mean, like, there's got to be a plan B. And the chatterbox is rolling around in his head and going, hey, look, if you would just see this one thing, God, like your plan B, you'll find out was better than your plan A, right? That's how you feel, right? Isn't that how every one of us feel when we feel like we're supposed to do something or we feel like God's moving in our life? We feel like if you would just pick someone else, that you'll find out real quick that someone else would do better than I would. Isn't that how the chatterbox wants us to hear? Is that we just get this like problem where we constantly have the chatterbox rattling away. Now, I want you to know something. I'm not talking to you about something that I don't struggle with. I'm talking with you about a message that I desperately need to hear. I'm not talking to you about something that I don't need to hear about. I'm talking with you about something that I'm really just talking to me, and I'm hoping that it matters to you. But here's the problem that I've always kind of experienced. I've always thought that pride was the opposite, or that humility was the opposite of pride, and that's true, right? But I've always kind of thought that insecurity is the opposite of pride. Does that feel like it? Like if somebody's proud, they're like, I got this, don't worry about it, I've got this taken care of. But isn't there that part of us that kind of feels like being insecure is really being humble? But that's not true. I mean, look at what Moses says to God and what God says back to Moses. He says, who gave you a mouth? Moses. Who allowed you to speak with it? Who taught you to hear? Who said that you could be one that hears or sees or speaks? Isn't what Moses doing, isn't that his insecurity isn't humility? It's not him going, oh, shucks, right? I don't have that. He's not being humble. He's being insecure. And in a way, isn't my insecurity the ultimate insult to God? Isn't it really looking at God and telling him, hey, what you gave me isn't enough? Understand something. Pride is thinking I've got this, right? Without you, God, I don't need you. Pride is being puffed up and big chested and going, oh, I got this, and I don't need God, I don't need people. I have this all on my own. Humility is recognizing that God has this, that God has given me everything I need. God's given me all of the resources I need, all of the people I need. Pride is going, I don't need your help. I don't need the help of my friends. I don't need the help of the people around me. I need to be the one who offers strength, not the one who needs it, right? That's pride. Humility is simply being willing to listen to other people, to accept help when it's offered, to care enough about the mission, to lay down our own agenda. That's the thing, and that's what he was getting at. He was ultimately saying, God, I'm not good enough. I'm not sharp enough. At the end, he's just saying, I'm not confident enough. I mean, he says, God, I just don't have what it takes. Now, ultimately, what we need to be saying to God is, God, I don't naturally have what it takes. And I'll go if you send me. Not please send someone else. Now, ultimately, in the story, I mean, you can read it for yourself, Exodus 3, 4, and 5, but ultimately, God is compassionate to Moses in his struggle. And he says, hey, how about I send your brother Aaron with you? How about I give you a kind of thing and you hear from me and you tell him and he'll be the one who speaks. He's not agreeing with Moses that Moses doesn't have what it takes. He's saying, listen, I promise you, I will give you everything good. God is patient and gracious and kind. And God here is so important for us as people who struggle with insecurity. And if you're the one guy who doesn't, maybe you just make a grocery list for a minute. But here's the deal. Every one of us struggles here. In the very beginning of this whole discourse back and forth with God, Moses goes, well, who am I supposed to tell him that sent me? I can't just go in there and go, hey, I'm Moses, let the Hebrew people go. Because they're going to say, no, who am I? I got to have some credibility. Where's my credibility going to come from? And I've always been a little bit confused by this one statement, because God says to Moses, this is before the whole insecurity battle, the whole conversation. In Exodus chapter 3, he says this. He says, God said to Moses, I am who I am. Say to the people of Israel that I am has sent me to you. Now, I mean, that's a little confusing, isn't it? I mean, if you're Moses and you're looking for confidence, God says, hey, go and tell the Pharaoh to let my people go. All of his free labor, just kind of write it off and just forget about it. And you're going to have to go pay to make this stuff and all this stuff. And you want me to go in with, I am sent me, and how am I going to do that? I mean, I don't know what we're supposed to say about this, but here's what God is ultimately saying. I've heard this taught a bunch of different ways. There's a little bit of it where he's saying, tell him that I am sent me. I'm the God who's all powerful. It's omnipotent. Maybe he's saying to him that God's saying, listen, tell him I'm the God who's I am all powerful. Tell him I'm omnipotent. Go in there and you tell him, I've got what it takes. I'll take care of it. I've got the power to overcome all these circumstances. You ever felt like you didn't have enough power, right? Like you were just you just didn't have what it takes. God's saying, I am powerful enough. Maybe he was saying that I am, there. I'm there with you. You're not going in alone, Moses. When you walk into the Pharaoh and you say, let my people go, it's not just you standing out there all alone. Understand something, I'm always with you. Have you ever felt alone? You ever felt totally abandoned? You're alone in this world and there's no hope and there's no purpose? Maybe what God was saying to Moses and what he's saying to you and me is the same. God's saying, I'm with you, right? I'm omnipresent. I'm everywhere. I'm at every place, at every moment in your life, and I've got what it takes to support you. Maybe what he's saying to Moses is that he's omnipresent. Maybe that he's not just saying that he's omnipotent and that he's omnipresent, but that he's all-knowing, that he's omniscient. You ever felt like you really wanted to just be understood? Maybe some of the biggest struggles that we have in our insecurity is just that nobody really understands me. Maybe they don't understand all the things. You ever just felt like you ever wanted to be fully known and fully loved? Most of the time we have trouble with church. Not so much, we put up a bunch of defenses. I don't like this, I don't like that, I don't like these people, I don't like that stuff. But really, a lot of times, most of the time, our tension with the whole idea of Jesus, church, God, his whole thing is that he knows us and loves us. And as much as we think we want that, we don't really like it because we don't love us. We're struggling with it because we know that God loves us and he knows us and he chooses to love us. And not only just to love us, but he likes us. He cares about us. He knows that even though we've made mistakes, even though we struggle, that he loves us anyway. He loves us and he loves us enough. Man, but I think it's more than that. When he says, I am, tell him I am sent me. It's not just that I'm omniscient. It's not just that I'm omnipresent. It's not that I'm omnipotent or powerful, all these different, he's not just telling these big ideas about God. It's more than that. When you say, I'm not good enough, God says, I'm gracious. When you say, I am not good enough, he says, I am gracious. I am good enough. I'm kind. I'm compassionate. I'm loving. When you say that I'm not sharp enough, God says, I am sufficient. I'm enough. I've got what it takes. When you're like, I don't know this problem, I don't know how to do that, or I'm not smart enough, or I don't have enough education, or I don't have enough, influence, or I'm not this or that. God says, I'm sufficient. I have everything that you need. When you say, I'm not confident enough, like Moses did, God was saying, you tell him I am sent you. He's just saying, I am faithful. I am everything that you think you're not. And so here's the thing for us as we work to crash the chatterbox. The bottom line for today is that when you say something, right? Whatever you say you're not blank enough, I'm not this enough, I'm not that enough, I'm not this enough. Whatever you say, God says, whatever you are not, I am. Whatever you are not, I am. Whatever you are not, I am. I'm going to say it one more time because it's uncomfortable. Because I know that there's a tension for us, right? We don't like to hear that. We don't like to hear that we're not. And even worse than hearing we're not, we don't like to recognize that when I don't feel sharp enough, he is. When I don't feel smart enough or good enough, that he is. We don't like to recognize his strength is necessary. You know why? Because at the end of the day, we're still proud. So I'm going to say it one more time. Whatever you think you are not, God says, I am. So what do you do next time? Next time you hear the chatterbox, and it's going to happen. It's probably happening right now. Oh, he doesn't know. This isn't true. That's great for Moses, but it's not good for you. That's cool 100 years ago or 500 years ago, thousands of years ago. That's way back then when Moses, that was 4,000 years ago, for crying out loud. I mean, do you really need to know that stuff? I mean, that's interesting and that's cute, but it's not true. So here's what I would encourage you to do. As we're wrapping up, maybe you identify those things that you feel I'm not blank enough. And then research. You're going to have to do a little bit of work here. It's not something that we can't just put the cookies on the bottom shelf. But then research to understand what is it about you that you're saying and what is the direct truth out of God's word. I'm not good enough. He's gracious enough. I'm not sharp enough. He's sufficient. I'm not powerful or sharp, like confident enough. He's gracious to us. So what is it that you need to understand? Is it that you understand that you are loved? Is it that you understand that you're significant, that you have everything we need? Do you understand who it is that you are? Because the answer to you're not blank enough is I am. God is enough. And just choose to say that to him. When he hears the chatterbox chattering away, your answer to that is, in him, I am blank. It's not just a statement. Come to know it as truth. I am is enough. Let me pray for you. God, we're just thankful to you. Thankful to you that in you we have everything it takes that you are powerful enough, you are strong enough, you are good enough, you are confident enough, that you will give us everything we need. You have given us everything we need. But at times, God, it's hard to accept it. God, I just pray that you give us the courage to be able to accept you and your promise for us at face value. We're thankful that you are enough. Amen.